Good morning. We welcome you to our daily devotions today. Today, wanted to talk about surprises, and it kind of goes along with our gospel text for this coming Sunday. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you are surprised to bump into someone in a place that you just shouldn't be seeing them, or you're way away from home and suddenly there they are. And had that experience one time on our mission trip. We were up in the top of the Rocky Mountains and at the gift shop actually, and suddenly bumping into one of our chaperone's sisters. They didn't even know they were both going to be in the same state in Colorado at that time, and it was just a complete surprise. Stuff like that happens all the time. Maybe bumping into someone just on vacation or in a different state, or we were traveling to El Salvador once, and in Atlanta we bumped into our church council vice president, Pam Cece, and it was a big surprise. What are you doing in Atlanta? So things like that happen. But our gospel text is about surprise, and it happens on Easter afternoon. So this is after all that has taken place at the tomb in the morning. Two of the disciples are traveling, and so I want to read from Luke 24, starting at verse 13. Now that same day, that afternoon, Easter afternoon, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" Now, throughout that walking along, they still cannot tell that it's Jesus, but throughout he opens scriptures to them and he surprises them as a teacher, opening up about all the scriptures that have been pointing to Jesus throughout time and throughout their history. And as they come near the village to which they were going, Jesus walked ahead as if he was going to go on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So Jesus went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized Jesus, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening up the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told him what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Like I said, surprises happen all the time to us. Sometimes bumping into someone that we just don't expect to see, maybe on vacation or away from home, even though we're not really away from home too much these days. But those surprises are things I think we need to look for. We need to look for God surprising us in our day-to-day, not knowing when we will come upon God in our daily life. And you'll notice that the surprise happens several times throughout the scripture. Surprised as this stranger starts to walk alongside them, and surprised how suddenly the stranger opens up all of scripture to point to who Jesus is. Surprised when he seems to be going on ahead of them and they invite him in as a guest. Surprised that they are allowed to serve him a meal and be the host for him. And then at the final ending, that surprise when Jesus reveals who he is in the breaking of the bread and then suddenly disappears. Those surprises happen to us throughout life. And I think we need to be people who look for God in our lives. Surprised how God can constantly show God's self to us in the simple things of life. And I think we as people of God need to be looking for where God reveals God's self to us. So much so that just like the disciples here, we say to ourselves, "And weren't our hearts burning within us when he revealed himself to us in the breaking of the bread?" Reminds me of a joke, and I think we need a joke nowadays. And so this is one of my favorites. This is a story about the Pope. And the Pope is making his is coming to America and wants to go to a large gathering of the people. And as he's picked up at the airport, the chauffeur has this long stretch limo for the Pope. They've sent a special car and a special driver to pick up the Pope. And as the chauffeur opens the back door, the Pope says, no, I want to drive today. And the chauffeur says, geez, okay. So the Pope lets him get in the back, and the Pope gets in the front driving. Well, the Pope has a little bit of a lead foot, and as he's driving kind of quick, sure enough, gets pulled over. And there's two officers in the car. The first goes up to the limo, and the second's just waiting to hear from the first. Well, the first is up there for a little bit at the window, looking quite surprised at the driver in the limousine. Of course, it's the Pope. And he finally comes back to the car, and the limo speeds off ahead. And the second officer is kind of wondering about this, why he let him go. And the first officer gets back in the car, and kind of with a stunned look on his face. Second officer says to him, what's going on? Why'd you let him go? And the first officer says, I don't know, that guy was big. He goes, what do you mean that guy was big? He goes, I don't know who it was, but he had the Pope for a chauffeur. We need to look for the surprises in life. We need to look for how God can pleasantly surprise us. Those times in our day where God can reveal God's self to us through love, through grace, through goodness of others, and as we share that goodness with each other. I hope today for you is a day where you look for God's grace, those God's sightings in our life, and seek to think about how God is revealing God's self to us, opening up our hearts and our minds that they may be burning with a message of God's love for us. And so I wish you blessings today as you go about your business and as you keep your eyes open, looking for how God can surprise us today and always. Amen.